on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness hast appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men and women, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us, thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of important trusts in these islands. Let thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and those whose interests thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ's sake. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Amen. Members, the House is now in session. Members, the minutes from the 3rd of May have been circulated. Are there any amendments required? No amendments. The minutes will be printed and confirmed as printed. Messages from the governor. There are none. Announcements. We've informed by Minister Tanae Furbert that she'll be absent today, and also MP Dennis Lister will be absent today as well. Whilst making an announcement, I'd like to acknowledge in the gallery this morning that we have a visit from the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, who are here as part of their, I believe it's 111th anniversary celebration. And we'd just like to welcome you to our chambers this morning, and also acknowledge the long history that you have, and wish you success as you continue to have your impact in the community. I believe this is part of your social action committee, and some of the endeavors that you do to reach out in the community and have an impact here in Bermuda. So we could encourage you in what you do, and we welcome you to our chambers this morning. Messengers from the Senate, there are none. Papers and communications to the House. Madam AG.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. Mr. Speaker, with the governor's recommendation and in accordance with Section 36(3) of the Bermuda Constitution, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the Court Fees and Expenses Amendment and Validation Rules 2024, proposed to be made in exercise of the power conferred by Section 2 of the Court Fees and Expenses Act 1971.
Thank you. Petitions, there are none. Statements by ministers and junior ministers. We have 5 statements this morning, members. The first is the name of the Minister Premier, Minister of Finance. I thought you were leaving us that time. There you go. Present your statement.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to...
Mr. Premier, I overlooked something.
Sorry.
Please. I have to seek your indulgence. I'm sorry. I was supposed to do something on the announcements. MP Pearman.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to offer you, as Speaker of this Honorable House, an apology for my remark made on the last sitting of the House. This happened in a context which lowered the decorum of the House, and I apologize for it.
Appreciate your apology, and we look forward to that we won't have to repeat that again. Thank you. Now we can continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise this morning to inform this Honorable House of the positive results of S&P Global Ratings, which I'll refer to as S&P's recent sovereign ratings review. Mr. Speaker, during the week of April 15, 2024, S&P Global Ratings conducted its annual ratings review of Bermuda. The purposes of this review was to assess the country's creditworthiness and to determine the level of risk associated with lending to Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, when evaluating a country's creditworthiness, a credit rating agency assesses the country's ability and willingness to service its financial obligations to commercial creditors on time and in full. Both quantitative and qualitative considerations form the basis for these forward-looking assessments. Mr. Speaker, to make its determination for Bermuda, S&P met with the Ministry of Finance, the Department of Statistics, as well as a number of other persons and entities in the public and private sector. Those interviewed outside the government agencies include the Governor, Bermuda Monetary Authority, the Association of Bermuda Insurers and Reinsurers, the Bermuda Tourism Authority, and the Bermuda Business Development Agency. And also, Mr. Speaker, I also believe the opposition. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that after evaluating the information received through the discussion and research, S&P has reaffirmed Bermuda's A+ long-term sovereign credit and secured senior unsecured debt ratings, A1 short-term rating, and AA+ transfer and convertibility assessment, with the outlook assessed as stable. Mr. Speaker, in explaining the rationale for the rating affirmation, S&P stated, and I quote, "The stable outlook reflects our expectation that the local economy will remain healthy and support solid government finances and low debt, as well as Bermuda's external asset position. We believe continued growth will support a balanced budget in line with the government's expectations this year. We assume a commitment to fiscal consolidation will lead to balanced budgets and a slight decrease in net general government debt over the next 3 years," end quote. Mr. Speaker, in the report published on May 7th, S&P indicated that Bermuda's economy is on track to grow by about 3% in 2024, following an estimated increase of 4% in 2023 and 6.4% in 2022. Solid growth reflects continued growth in the international business sector, where Bermuda is a global leader in the insurance and reinsurance sector. In addition, tourism continues to rebound from the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the combined opposition would like the people of this country to believe that this historic economic growth is solely a result of the international business sector and has nothing to do with the government's economic policies. However, in their report, S&P contradicted this narrative by praising Bermuda for, and I quote, "its strong institutional framework and prudent policy making," end quote, a clear nod to our government's foresight and disciplined approach. Mr. Speaker, these comments help to validate the government's economic policies and our commitment to moving this country towards stable, long-term economic growth combined with fiscal discipline. Mr. Speaker, S&P is highly regarded, internationally recognized ratings agency. Many, including the opposition, refers to it as a gold standard of rating agencies, and so the public should accept this report as an independent and objective assessment of our fiscal and economic policies. As a government, we are encouraged that S&P has acknowledged the economic progress that we have made thus far. Mr. Speaker, we recently made a $50 million repayment towards our national debt, are on the path towards the first balanced budget in over 20 years, and last week, the Minister of Economy and Labor announced the lowest unemployment rate since 1980. Again, Mr. Speaker, the lowest unemployment rates in the country since 1980. Mr. Speaker, we have successfully rolled out 67 affordable housing units, recently celebrated a record-breaking opening of our cruise season, and are making tangible steps towards implementing the most fundamental tax reform in Bermuda's modern history. Mr. Speaker, while the report was largely positive and endorsed the hard work that the government has done to date, it is also important to note that we must continue to be vigilant and maintain our prudent approach to managing the country's finances and work towards a budget surplus. Mr. Speaker, before I close, I'd like to thank all the stakeholders who met with S&P and helped to ensure their continued confidence in Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to emphasize that this government is fully committed to implementing reforms that will ensure the long-term stability or sustainability of Bermuda's public finances and broad economic growth while reducing taxes to ease Bermuda's cost of living. The successful implementation of the Economic Recovery Plan, the global minimum tax, and increased investment within Bermuda will ensure that Bermuda prospers and that credit rating agencies continue to endorse its creditworthiness. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Health. Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to provide this House and the public with an update on the Department of Health's Child Care Regulations Program. The first 5 years of life are the most critical periods in children's brain development. As approximately 90% of Bermuda's children are receiving daycare within this period, the aim of the Child Care Regulations Program is to ensure all children have access to happy, healthy, safe, and developmentally appropriate care. Mr. Speaker, child care refers to the care and supervision of children by someone other than their parents, either in the daycare provider's home or in a group setting. Child care is regulated and provided in two types of settings locally: as licensed daycare centers, and I'll refer to that as DCCs, which is the group setting, and the in-home care by registered daycare providers, or DCPs. Child care in Bermuda, also known as daycare, is primarily regulated, Mr. Speaker, by the Children's Act 1998. This act establishes the overall framework for child protection and well-being in Bermuda, including the daycare settings. The Daycare Center Regulations 1999 outline the specific requirements for daycare centers to obtain and maintain a license, and they cover areas such as staff qualifications, child-to-staff ratios, health and safety standards, and curriculum. The Child Care Standards of 2018 provide more detailed guidance on best practices for daycare providers in areas such as health, safety, and supervision, staff qualification and training, curriculum and developmentally appropriate activities as well. And so, Mr. Speaker, the Child Care Regulations Program within the Department of Health is responsible for licensing and registering daycare centers and providers and enforcing these regulations and standards. Working parents need child care to look after their children while they provide for their families during the work week. And child care providers, socialization, and educational benefits for children and quality child care can be a valuable and enriching experience at a critical stage of physical, emotional, and cognitive development. Child care regulations is essential to ensure the health, safety, and well-being of children in care settings. It establishes and oversees compliance with minimal standards for child care, such as the following, Mr. Speaker: staff qualification and training. Child care providers should have the knowledge and skills to care for children effectively. Child-to-staff ratios. There must be enough qualified staff in a child care setting at all times to supervise the children properly. Health and safety standards. Child care settings should be safe and healthy for children. And finally, curricula and activities. Child care programs should provide developmentally appropriate and stimulating activities for children. Mr. Speaker, effective child care regulations promotes quality care that can benefit children's learning and development, and the CCR team works with individuals and centers to raise their capacity to provide high-quality care. And to this end, the CCRP utilizes the Standards for Rating of Service Providers, or STARS, system to evaluate care settings. This comprehensive inspection tool was designed using the Children's Act 1998, the Daycare Center Regulations 1999, and the Child Care Standards of 2018, which are aligned with international best practice standards. Mr. Speaker, in the coming weeks, the Department of Health will launch a public relations campaign before the summer of 2024, and the desired result is that parents and providers clearly understand and share the STARS values, namely striving for excellence, which is the S, T, targeting a play-based approach, A, accountability to children, parents, and each other, R, responsiveness to the individual needs of the child, and S, safe and healthy environments. The STARS inspection allows centers and providers to be recognized for meeting the essential child care requirements, as well as those choosing to meet higher standards. It is also another tool to empower families when selecting the right child care placement for their child. Licensed daycare centers and daycare providers must comply with the provisions of the Act and regulations. The DCCs and the DCPs are required to receive at least 3 stars rating, which indicates that the center or the provider has met the minimal requirements that are in the law. Those with 4 and 5-star ratings have exceeded the requirements by successfully implementing additional best practice standards. Following an inspection, centers or providers may need to enhance the quality of care and conditions to meet the minimal regulatory standards, which again is 3 stars. The CCR team offers continuous guidance and support to help meet these requirements. Mr. Speaker, the following are some of the key areas that not only assure compliance with minimal standards, but also contribute to high quality care settings. Child care facilities must be well maintained, free from hazards, and age appropriate for the children that they serve. These include proper playground equipment, electrical safety, and clean and sanitary conditions. Toys and equipment should be age appropriate, in good condition, and sanitized regularly. Constant and active supervision is essential, especially during transitions and outdoor play. Defined areas of responsibility should be in place for staff. Children should never be left alone with choking hazards or in situations where they could injure themselves. Mr. Speaker, sick children should be excluded from care to prevent the spread of illness, and clear policies on illness exclusion and return to care should be shared with parents. Hand washing routines and hygiene practices should be emphasized with both staff and children, and regular cleaning and disinfection of surfaces and toys is essential. Mr. Speaker, ongoing skills training is crucial. Staff should be competent with pediatric first aid and CPR, safe sleep practices, child abuse recognition and prevention, and child development stages and appropriate activities. Investment in ongoing professional development opportunities keeps staff up to date on best practices and promotes continuous improvement in child care quality. Staff to child ratios are mandated and based on the children's age and developmental needs. Younger children require more supervision, so lower ratios are essential for infants and toddlers. Activities and curriculum at daycare should be designed to meet the specific developmental needs of children of different age groups, and this includes promoting their emotional, social, physical, intellectual, and creative development. Play-based learning is essential for young children's learning and development, and curriculum and activities should be designed to encourage exploration, discovery, creativity, and imagination through play. A balance of individual and group activities, indoor and outdoor play, and structured and unstructured learning opportunities should be provided. And activities should be hands-on and engaging, allowing children to learn through active participation and exploration while fostering independence and creativity. Mr. Speaker, effective child care regulation helps to protect children from abuse, neglect, and accidents. And our team works closely with the Department of Child and Family Services and the Vulnerable Persons Unit of the Bermuda Police Service for child safeguarding. And these agencies and the courts also assist with daycare staff vetting for the sector. By empowering staff through knowledge and professional development, and in collaboration with Bermuda College, the Child Care Regulation Program facilitates growth of a qualified and skilled child care workforce that fosters a safe and nurturing environment for children to thrive in. Mr. Speaker, the CCR team at the Department of Health collaborates closely with the child care sector, implementing initiatives to ensure regulatory compliance and quality improvement. And here are some of the key points, Mr. Speaker. Since 2022, the CCR section has conducted quarterly meetings with the sector, and in 2023 distributed a feedback survey to stakeholders. This collaborative effort led to adjustments in the implementations of the STARS program. The CCR team has improved communications to ensure better understanding of the inspection scoring criteria, outcomes, and remedial actions. And following consultations, the Department of Health adjusted the duration of annual inspections and introduced a 1-month notice period to enhance efficiency and stakeholder readiness. And to ensure fairness and accuracy, annual inspections now allow for reevaluation before the publication of the STARS ratings. Recognizing the financial challenges faced by child care providers, the CCR has facilitated import duty relief for materials and supplies utilized in child care settings, easing the operational burdens. Mr. Speaker, the healthy physical, cognitive, and social development of children during their early years, from birth to age 5, holds immense significance. The ministry is committed to working with the child care sector and parents to ensure that we have safe and high-quality child care in place to protect our children and support working families in Bermuda. And I'd like to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank the hardworking team at the Department of Health's Child Care Regulations Program. And if the public, and especially parents or parents-to-be, wish to learn more, I would encourage them to visit www.gov.bm Child Care Regulations Program. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, and that statement this morning is from the Minister of Works, Minister Birch.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and thank you. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda Day is next week Friday.
Yes.
And as all in this honorable house know, the festivities are the unofficial start of the summer season. Vacations, family reunions, picnics, and beach days all begin after next week Friday for locals. Mr. Speaker, but the vacation season starts sooner for some, mainly tourists who arrive to our shores in March and April. They travel by both air and sea. Recently, attention has been given to the lifeguard coverage at our beaches because of the tragic event in April of this year where a man lost his life in an effort to save a drowning girl on Horseshoe Bay. Mr. Speaker, might I take a moment to pause in honor of Mr. Hyun Duk Shin, who paid the ultimate sacrifice while helping to successfully rescue a young person. His actions should be considered heroic. While there are no words to ease his family's immeasurable loss, his actions demonstrate the willingness of one human being helping another in a time of crisis. Mr. Speaker, the lifeguard service under the remit of the Department of Parks continues to face significant challenges in maintaining adequate coverage due to staffing shortages. Mr. Speaker, I invite honorable colleagues to recall during this year's budget debate where I asserted that, and I quote, Mr. Chairman, as the government is expecting continued high visitation, especially in cruise line calls, and the expansion of the season into November, the department anticipates an increased influx of visitors to the beaches and commensurately an increased need for lifeguard services. A budget allocation of $702,000 for 24-25 takes this into consideration and is in line with the 2023-24 budget primarily to meet the staffing demands of the season, end quote. In actuality, Mr. Speaker, for the 2023-24 fiscal year, this government increased the budget allocation for lifeguards by $246,000 from the year prior to meet the peak season demands. Then, this fiscal year, the government matched the same amount. Mr. Speaker, while it is acknowledged that the lifeguard service is experiencing shortages, the issues are fundamentally deeper than just financial figures. It is about attracting personnel. Mr. Speaker, in 2009 and 2010, the lifeguard service had 37 and 36 trained lifeguards, respectively, some Bermudian, some non-Bermudian, which is normal for this specialized service, as I'm sure all can agree that we need to ensure that lifeguards are trained and experienced enough to undertake the vital task of saving the lives of beach patrons. Fast forward to the year 2022, the Department of Parks received only 28 applications, 10 of which were withdrawn, subsequently leaving a total of 18 trained lifeguards. In 2023, again, the department received only 28 applications, of which 21 were approved as trained lifeguards. This year, again, only 28 applications have been received so far, with a total of 8 persons being approved and currently serving as lifeguards, 3 full-time and 5 in reserve. Some may ponder as to why this is a stagnation in application numbers, but there are a plethora of reasons similar to any other public office or post, including the length of time of the hiring process, the length of time for work permit approvals, and of course, compensation levels. Mr. Speaker, despite having to pass an initial 9-day intense training course, pass monthly physical assessments, and pass annual 24-hour training courses, our starting lifeguards currently take home 18% or $197.26 less weekly than the lowest paid worker within the Department of Parks. Mr. Speaker, senior lifeguards Those who are accountable for facilitating junior staff with developing newly acquired skills in life-saving and maintaining a safe environment for both beach patrons and staff, this position takes home 15% or $193.20 less weekly than the lowest paid foreman at the Department of Parks. These first-line managers still take home less weekly than the lowest paid worker with the Department of Parks. Mr. Speaker, yes, in fact, the government increased the budget to hire more staff and to take into consideration for the expanded cruise ship season. It's not enough to attract interested persons to either leave their current lifeguarding employment or begin the process of becoming a new lifeguard. Just for edification purposes, we are not the only jurisdiction experiencing these issues with attracting lifeguards. In the United States alone, places like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Los Angeles all share this similar situation. Mr. Speaker, as I've said previously, the department has 8 persons currently serving as lifeguards, 3 full-time and 5 part-time, and hopes to have an additional 5 new full-time seasonal lifeguards on the beaches by the 15th of June, assuming that all of the remaining 17 applicants pass their respective assessments. However, Mr. Speaker, what is the government doing now to alleviate the current situation? Currently, the Department of Parks is advertising again in hopes of bringing to attention open positions for those potential lifeguards that may have missed the opportunity initially. Also, continue to research for more aggressive advertising methods to attract local talent. In the interim, the department has begun the process to increase the number of water safety signage at our national parks, including drafting designs for updated water signage that is intended to be more eye-catching. At the ministry level, efforts are being undertaken to raise the wages for lifeguards. While this may be unpopular to increase the cost to the government, this needs to be done to ensure we are attracting talent, Mr. Speaker. Exploring increasing the starting pay, at the very least, consider matching the lowest paid worker, heavy laborer, for our starting lifeguard wages, and consider starting senior lifeguard pay at the lowest foreman rate equivalent. Reinstitute training bonuses incentives. Currently, new recruits do not get paid for their 9-day, 72 hours training session. Reinstitute with more parameters, i.e. training bonus, for those that complete a minimum of 3 months of service. This could mean lifeguards having to return for a second year in order to qualify and obtain the monetary incentives. Consider fast-tracking of work permits. The Department of Parks Lifeguard Service annually applies for short-term work permits. Decreasing time barriers and/or Department of Immigration requirements for receiving approved short-term work permits may lead to faster recruitment and ultimately getting lifeguards on the beaches faster. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry and the Department of Parks is committed to strengthening and expanding the lifeguard service to better mirror the cruise ship season. This will ensure that sufficient lifeguard coverage is provided for the most used beaches this summer and beyond, and that the health and safety of patients is a priority. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Transport. Mr. Furbert.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to the public. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine boarding a bus or a ferry in Bermuda and effortlessly using smartphone or an easy device to pay your fare? Mr. Speaker, can you imagine a seamless journey where the hassle of carrying cash or scrambling for tickets or tokens become relics of the past? Well, Mr. Speaker, the imagination will soon become a reality. Mr. Speaker, today I stand before you with great anticipation and pride as we unveil a groundbreaking evolution in our public transportation system, the forthcoming launch of the new digital fare media for buses and ferries. This transformative initiative signifies not just a technological leap, but a paradigm shift towards a more connected, efficient, and user-centric transportation experience for all. Mr. Speaker, on 24th of June, we are introducing a phase one of the new digital fare, media for buses and ferries, making a pivotal moment in our journey towards modernization and efficiency. This transformative initiative is designed to cater to the needs of both our local population and visitors, ensuring a seamless travel experience that aligns with the demands of our dynamic society, allowing me to explain the myriad benefits that this innovative system brings forth. Mr. Speaker, gone are the days of fumbling for loose change or standing in long queues to purchase tickets. With the digital fare media, commuters can effortlessly manage their fares through a simple, user-friendly app that is accessible via smartphones or the use of a digital method. This convenience extends to visitors who will be able to navigate our transportation network with ease, leaving them with more time to explore and enjoy our island's offerings. Mr. Speaker, in our fast-paced world, efficiency is paramount. The digital fare media is not only expedites the boarding process, but also minimize the risk of errors associated with traditional ticketing systems. This heightened efficiency translates into more punctual services and greater reliability, a significant advantage to commuters and tourists alike. Embracing digitalization is not merely a choice, it is a testament to our commitment to progress and innovation. By adopting cutting-edge technologies in our transportation infrastructure, we are signaling to the world our readiness to embrace the challenges and opportunities of the digital age. Mr. Speaker, additionally, as stewards of our environment, we also recognize the imperative to reduce our carbon footprint. By transitioning to a digital fare system, we are taking steps towards a greener future with reduced paper usage and emissions associated with printing traditional transportation tickets. Mr. Speaker, phase one will be unveiled on June 24th, 2024. The launch will introduce the following: the ability for passengers to conveniently buy tickets using their mobile phones through an app. Once purchased, they can effortlessly board buses or ferries by simply displaying their digital ticket to the operators. Operators will be able to determine the type of fare purchase by the signal on the passenger screen, whether it is a type of zone purchase or adult or child fare. As the transition to digital fare media is phased approach, the option of purchasing and using the traditional fare will remain in place throughout the phases. Mr. Speaker, subsequent to phase one, which passengers would have been provided the ability to buy tickets using the mobile phones through an app, phase 2 and 3 following will be introduced: a real-time application, the ability to use credit and debit cards, the ability to use contactless transportation passes, which will replace the senior children and special needs passes, the ability to purchase digital tickets with machine-readable codes, and the introduction of a validator system on the bus and ferries. Mr. Speaker, the real-time application allows passengers to see the location of buses and ferries on their mobile devices in real time. When Johnny or Mrs. Smith is waiting at the bus stop, they can look at the map of Bermuda on their app, on their cell phone, and can have a visual of the location of the bus or ferry and track its movement as it travels to destinations. The validators are small devices that will be installed in every bus and ferry in the public fleet. Upon boarding a bus or ferry, a passenger will need only to tap their phone, debit or credit card, contactless transportation pass, or digital ticket on the validator to prove fare payment. The ability to use credit and debit cards will allow passengers to board a bus or ferry, enter the zone requirement, whether it's a zone 3 or 14, and also the option to select whether the passenger is a child or an adult. Additionally, the passenger can select for several persons if they are traveling and paying for persons such as family and friends. Seniors, children, and individuals with special needs will be empowered to buy passes through their mobile phones. However, those without access to a phone can opt for a physical pass. These passes will be contactless, enabling seamless boarding on buses and ferries. Phase 2 and 3 are scheduled for launch in September 2024. Mr. Speaker, commencing on June the 1st, we are set to launch a comprehensive and enlightened public campaign designed to inform and educate the community about the what and how. This public awareness campaign will offer detailed insights into upcoming developments, particularly regarding the transition to digital fair media, specifically further explaining what digital fair media entails and explaining how to use it. Our goal is to equip the public with a thorough understanding of what lies ahead, ensuring they are well prepared for the changes on the horizon. Mr. Speaker, to conclude, we are about to experience a revolutionary change in our public transportation system, the digital fare medium. This will not only be a way of paying for your rides, but a new way of experiencing them. When digital fare media, with digital fare media, you will enjoy convenience, security, and efficiently like you've never seen before. You will be able to use your smartphone, smartwatch, or any other compatible device to access any public mode of transport without having to worry about cash, tickets, or cards. You will be able to track your travel history, manage your balance, and plan your trips with ease. Digital fare, Mr. Speaker, is more than a technology. It is a lifestyle. It's a way of embracing the future and making the most of every journey. Join us in this exciting adventure, and let's make Bermuda greener and happier with digital fare media. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Economy and Labor, Minister Hayward.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to provide members of this honorable House clarification that paid leave entitlement for persons who receive gratuities and service charges as a part of the minimum hourly wage rate is to be set at $16.40. Mr. Speaker, in addition, the ministry wishes to advise this honorable House that the ministry intends to amend the Employment Act 2000 to clarify in law that other gratuities, which do not constitute part of the minimum hourly wage rate, will be excluded from the calculation of leave entitlement, which is the current intention of the law. Mr. Speaker, prior to the 1st of March 2024, there was no definition for gratuity or service charge under the Act, and both were considered as falling within the term tip as defined in the Act, and as such did not constitute wages. For the purpose of calculating the paid leave for employees who received gratuities and service charges, pursuant to the Employment Minimum Hourly Wage Order 2023, prior to the 1st of March 2024, the interpretation of a week's wage pursuant to the Act did not apply, and these employees should have been remunerated at a minimum rate of $16.40 for all statutory leave entitlement. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to the Employment Protection of Employees Tips and Gratuities, Other Gratuitous Amendment Act 2023, which took effect on the 1st of March 2024, the term other gratuitous was introduced and effectively differentiated tips from other gratuitous. As a result, the calculation of a week's wage for employees who receive gratuities and service charges has fundamentally changed, i.e., the leave entitlement for employees who receive other gratuities and those wages vary from week to week should be calculated by taking the average wage earned over the previous 12 weeks worked. Mr. Speaker, recognizing the challenges that industries which accept other gratuities on behalf of their employees would and are currently facing, the ministry convened a special meeting of the Labor Advisory Council to discuss these concerns and reach a consensus on the most reasonable and just way forward. Mr. Speaker, as is Most honorable hosts may already be aware the LAC comprises of representatives of the government, employer groups, and worker groups as equal and independent partners together seeking solutions to the issues facing Bermuda's labor force through social dialogue. Mr. Speaker, the LAC had a robust discussion on the paid leave entitlement for persons who receive other gratuities as part of the minimum hourly wage entitlement. The consensus reached by the LAC is as following. The paid leave entitlement for persons who receive other gratuities as part of their wages should be set at the minimum hourly wage rate, which is currently $16.40. Mr. Speaker, the ministry thanks the members of the LAC for the continued work and engagement on behalf of their respective memberships and would like to take this opportunity to thank the members of this honorable house for the opportunity to address them in this regard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Member, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister for Cabinet, Minister Campbell.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to the listening public. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take the opportunity to update the House on the progress with the preparation of the new City of Hamilton Plan. The House will recall that the draft City of Hamilton Plan 2024 was released for public consultation on the 23rd of February 2024, with the consultation period ending on the 26th of April. Mr. Speaker, this marks the end of significant consultation efforts undertaken by the Department of Planning in support of a land use plan, which will be used to guide and shape development activity within the city in the forthcoming years. Mr. Speaker, the release of the draft plan for consultation provided the public and other stakeholders with an opportunity to submit their comments to the department with a view to shaping the plan. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I would like to offer my sincere gratitude to everyone who has contributed to the plan-making process thus far. I strongly believe that it is of critical importance for people to participate in the preparation of land use plans, as these documents are used to shape the spaces and places that we interact with every day in life. Furthermore, robust and meaningful consultation is how we test concepts, reach consensus, and achieve buy-in, and ultimately, for plans to be successful, people need to know that they have been part of the process and their opinions have been valued. Mr. Speaker, as part of the consultation process in support of the draft plan, the department undertook a series of activities to publicize the plan and provide the public with an opportunity to discuss its content. This included virtual public town hall meetings, pop-up sessions in the city, a radio interview, as well as extensive social media outreach. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that I directly participated in some of these events and was inspired to witness the passion of the department staff for this project and the genuine belief that a progressive land use plan, such as the emerging city plan, could be the bedrock for a new era of economic investment in our island's capital. Mr. Speaker, in this vein, I am encouraged to be informed by the department that there has been a notable level of interest from developers, agents, and architects in the approach to decision-making outlined within the plan and the elevated status it affords to design quality. Mr. Speaker, I can confirm that only one objection to the draft plan was received as part of the consultation exercise, which is a testament to the work of the department and the fact that officers made themselves directly accessible to members of the public throughout the consultation phase. Allowing for open dialogue provided opportunities for people to have their questions answered, minimizing the need to make formal submissions to the department. However, Mr. Speaker, this is only part of the reason why I believe there has been a minimal number of objections. Mr. Speaker, the House will recall that having reflected upon previous plan-making endeavors, the Department of Planning decided to add an entirely new stage to the plan-making process in preparation of this new city plan. This resulted in the publication of the City of Hamilton Plan consultative draft 2023 in January 2023. Mr. Speaker, there were multiple reasons behind the introduction of this new and earlier stage to the plan making process, which I believe are worth repeating, as the department's intentions have now proven to be fruitful. Mr. Speaker, the department is acutely aware of previous criticisms which it has received in preparing land use plans, particularly around the release of an operative draft plan and the perceived lack of meaningful public engagement. The entire ethos behind the new consultative draft plan stage of the process was to create an earlier stage to maximize opportunities for public input. The department intentionally front loaded consultation efforts at this stage in recognition that this was the optimal stage for influencing the content of the plan. Mr. Speaker, the consultative draft plan received a total of 19 formal written submissions, and the department directly responded to all those participants to make them aware of how their comments were processed. The fact that only a single objection was received to the formal draft plan is a clear indication that people were satisfied by the department's responses and that the consultative draft stage was a worthwhile exercise. Mr. Speaker, it is also worth noting that the consultation draft plan stage provided an opportunity to address concerns outside of the legislated confines of the draft plan stage. This allowed for a more fluid exchange of opinions and generated an inherent motivation to reach consensus before even reaching a legislative stage of the process. Mr. Speaker, I would like to acknowledge the contributions of the Corporation of Hamilton in getting the plan to this stage of the process. I'm aware that there has been ongoing dialogue between the department and the corporation's technical staff. These conversations have ensured that there is an intrinsic understanding of how some aspects of the plan can impact upon the corporation's areas of responsibility and that there are appropriate policy measures in place to provide for informed solutions. Mr. Speaker, the department is now in the process of undertaking the final legislative steps required to move the plan towards adoption, and it is anticipated that, due to having only received a single objection, the department will comfortably be able to achieve the targeted adoption date of December 2024. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, that brings us to a close of statements this morning. We will now move on. Reports of committees. There are none. That takes us to the question period. Members, you'll see on the order paper today that we have written questions that were submitted and required written responses, and I believe the responses have been forwarded. Yes?
They've not been received yet, Mr. Speaker, but I'm sure they will.
I'm emailing them to you now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay. As for the questions this morning generated from statements that were given, we do have questions this morning, and we'll start that question period now. The first question this morning is in reference to the statement from the Minister of Health. Minister of Health, MP Jackson would like to put questions to you this morning. MP Jackson?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I just have a couple of questions for the minister on the child care regulations. Before I start, my first question, because it may have been missed during the budget brief, I'm wondering if the minister can just provide us with the total number of child care providers and child care centers in Bermuda.
Budget brief or her statement to me?
Yes, from her statement, but she may have mentioned it in the budget brief, but I missed it, and many people may have missed it.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. I would invite the honorable member to look at the budget brief, which provides the metrics and the numbers as it relates to that particular line item.
Supplementary or second question?
So, supplementary.
Go ahead.
Where might the parents find a list of the registered licensed child care providers?
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That can be found at www.gov.bm/Child Care Regulations Program.
Yep. Supplementary?
Another question?
New question? Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My other question is wondering if the minister might be able to provide a little more information on the inspectors, the number of inspectors, and whether they are coming out of the Ministry of Health, how that's formed, and and then I have a supplementary.
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do not have the number in total of the inspectors, but they do all come under the Ministry of Health. It's the Child Care Regulations Team, all of which have extensive qualifications with respect to child care psychology. In fact, the director of it has a PhD in psychology. But the numbers, I want to say it's about 5, but I can get that information for the honorable member. It's probably in the budget book, but I will get that information for the honorable member.
Supplementary or new question?
Kind of a new question. Thank you for indulging.
Your third question. Then.
Yes, my third question is if a parent, because of course these inspections are annual and the rest of, so there's the rest of the time, there may not be that kind of oversight. I'm just wondering where could parents and how do parents report if they have any questions or concerns about their daycare facility?
Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honorable member for that question. That is very important. As I indicated in the statement, we will continue with public engagement, so that they can recognize parents, soon-to-be parents, and providers, the benefits of the STAR program and what it entails. However, again, not to sound repetitious, but that same email address addresses all the regulations, so a parent can contact the ministry directly or alternatively utilize that email address for registering any type of concerns with respect to the child care or the daycare providers.
Okay. Supplementary? Thank you. Members, that's the end of the questions for Minister of Health. We now move on. Minister Works, the opposition whip, has questions for you this morning.
Good morning, colleagues, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the last paragraph on page 2, the minister mentions that there are other jurisdictions experiencing similar challenges. Just curious as to whether or not the minister is aware of the pay that the U.S., maybe New York or New Jersey, which he mentioned, what they are paying their lifeguards.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I have no idea.
Supplementary?
Okay, yeah, supplementary.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just curious. So the gauge of saying that we're going to potentially, as put in the statement, that we're going to match it up with the lowest labor figures to get the lifeguards to that potential figure. I'm just trying to understand why we would use that as a barometer as opposed to the industry's barometer that's being done around the world.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the figures that I gave would be guides. Part of the assessment will be to look at what the budget can sustain and what the industry standard is for that. And we will come up with a figure that is reflective of both of those considerations.
Yep. Supplementary?
Again, so you are going to look at what the industry is doing then, and is that a confirmation of what I said, that you're going to be looking at the industry and using that as part of the gauge?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, yes.
Supplementary? Sorry, yet to second question.
Second question, yes.
Yes.
Second question. Certainly. And also on page 3, it's mentioned about let me just go to it. My apologies. Exploring increasing the starting pay. So are we looking at, when you say exploring, are we looking to implement something by this season, during this year, or are we looking at the next season?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, the plan is to do it as soon as we possibly can within the current budgetary constraints. The challenge with lifeguards is that they have traditionally been seasonal. And so right away you can see there would be challenges in finding people that would be able to do that. The traditional seasonal participants in that have generally been foreign college students who come to Bermuda for the summer and it works out as a good arrangement for a college student. It's been very difficult to recruit Bermudians in that construct. And so the process of what we're looking at now is how we can encourage Bermudians and make it economically viable for them to participate as a lifeguard. As a matter of fact, the government has one full-time lifeguard superintendent in the Department of Parks. And so this is a whole new concept that is being looked at as a result of the increase in cruise ship visitors, as well as the increase of the number of people that go to beaches. And so there's a wide scope in this in terms of us. One, I can say we will not be able to provide lifeguards to every beach we have in the country. That's a fact. Two, looking at providing lifeguards at more than Horseshoe Bay, and so that you can spread the interest from tourists to various beaches as opposed to just one beach. And so there's a full holistic scope. I've had a briefing note of about 7 pages that sets out the history of this whole business, what needs to be looked at going forward, what is the industry standard in terms of number of lifeguards to people on the beach. And so it's a whole new exercise. But I would also point out, Mr. Speaker, that we have to be realistic. And part of my statement I mentioned about signage. Everywhere on this planet that has pools or beaches generally has a sign that says no lifeguard on duty, swim at your own risk. And that's a disclaimer, but it's not discounting the fact that we still will make an effort to provide lifeguards on the beaches.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Yes, supplementary. Of the 8, I believe you mentioned lifeguards that we have. How many are Bermudian? Of Bermuda status, I should.
Mr. Speaker, the 5 reserve ones are Bermudian. So by reserve, I mean they have a full-time job somewhere else, and they do lifeguarding as a weekend activity or evening activity.
Second sub or third question? No more questions? Minister Works, that's the end of questions for you. Thank you. The next questions this morning are for the Minister of Transport. Minister of Transport, the opposition leader would like to put questions to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning to you. Good morning to my colleagues and the listening public. Would the Honorable Minister be able to inform this Honorable House or explain how he's going to reduce the risk of fraud or people cheating the system as it relates to his statement on page 4, where he said once purchased, the tourists will be able to effortlessly board buses and ferries by simply displaying their digital ticket to operators. This seems to me to invite fraud because the person would simply be able to take a picture of one phone to another phone. So what, if anything, are the plans of the ministry to make sure that we're still able to collect our appropriate fees in this structure? Thank you.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I believe that the system will be secured. I'm sure that there will be times when there may be some challenges that may take place, but we will continue to monitor what takes place. But even right now, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure whether members realize that individuals actually go up to the little box that's on the bus and put foreign currency in or whatever. And so we believe this is more secured than that will take place. And eventually, as I said, there will be a device when you tap it, that information will be more secure than ever.
Mm-hmm. Supplementary?
None, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Minister, you also have questions for you from MP Jackson. MP Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the minister if he might be able to provide a little information about the development of the internet capacity or the internet coverage, given the fact that this will be the first time that Bermuda is really engaging in an interactive online payment process on our roads versus from our homes.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, you're well aware that all of us, most of us who are in this room, have some type of internet connection, and it's normally hooked up to Digicel or wherever they hook up their internet. So that's not a concern of ours. People are well aware how that works in Bermuda right now. So I think we work the same way as far as getting access to internet. If that's what you're talking about.
Supplementary?
Yes, a supplementary. So will the buses then be fitted with some form of internet antenna so that will there be in the future maybe even Wi-Fi connection on buses?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, there's always a possibility that we can look at.
Second sub or new question?
A new question.
Uh,
With regard to our visitors on the island, and yes, given our internet connections and data programs are getting more sophisticated, but when our visitors come to the island and they are only looking for this immediate internet access in order to get on a public transportation bus, how does the minister see that app working, the process working for those visitors who get off of a cruise ship or an airplane and just want to catch the bus for one day? Like how will that work? Do they have to go through the whole pass process? Or if they just want to buy one ticket for one fare one day?
Minister?
All tourists, as you're aware, many tourists, as you know, already books for internet when they come here, and the same process will be working. So that's what you're talking about. There are many tourists that lands in Bermuda right now. This is not new, right? There are tourists right now that actually come to the island, whether it's on cruise or on airlines. They get off and they book internet access, right? And as I said earlier, they'll also be able to use eventually the credit card and debit cards.
Supplementary or new question?
I do have a supplementary, but it's still within the context of internet access. So what about in places in Bermuda where we do find, especially in natural places like Horseshoe Bay, if they're getting on the bus in a place, and I know that the minister just said that he feels that most people already have data, but sometimes in some places in Bermuda, there is no data because of blackout spots where you just can't get the internet access no matter what data plan you've got.
Mr. Speaker, I know the honorable member is just searching for a type of question. I mean, you can go on and on and on and on, but the technology is here in Bermuda. Bermuda is a very sophisticated society, and there are times maybe this just move to a different direction, move 100 feet, move 200 feet, and we get access, and you're well aware of that right now.
Supplementary or new question? Okay. Thank you, members, ministers. That brings us to a close of questions for this morning. We'll now move on. And the next item this morning is the obituary and congratulatory remarks. Let me just reset our time in here. Would any member wish to speak to the MP Simmons Wade?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
And listening audience. I'd first like to sadly give condolences to the family of the late Calvin Simons. I was last here and I gave condolences for his daughter, Lori, which was just a month ago. So I give condolences to his sister, Nelda, and his two remaining daughters, Sherry and Carla. If you can beg my indulgence, Speaker. Calvin Simons from 1962 to April 1973 worked at NASA. He was one of the first, probably Bermudians that were there. I think there were 4 or 5 Bermudians. He initially started his career in the position measurement lab. Then he advanced to the acquisition aid lab. Then he took numerous courses and he was signed to the telemetry section. He also engaged in receiving and monitoring the signals for the Apollo spaceship. He was one of the team of technicians who commanded machines that received signals capable of recording everything from a battery voltage level in the spaceship to the heartbeat of an orbiting astronaut. The received signals provided ground controllers with information regarding performance for both the spaceship and astronauts. Calvin took a keen interest in computer, and as a result, he was transferred to the computer section, which was responsible for radar tracking and telemetry data transmitted to the Mission Control Center. I would also like to give my condolences to Winifred Robinson from St. George's. She was actually a very, very good friend of my mother, and condolences to her daughters, Kit, Donna, and Gina. As I do each week, I would also like to give birthday wishes to my constituents who reached the age of at least 65. So my first birthday wish goes to Margaret Cooper, who turned 90, to John Sharp Jr., who turned 70, and to Cheryl Marini, who turned 70 as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member. MP Simmons, I see you jumped very quickly. Would you like your 3 minutes?
Thank you.
Go
Good
right
morning,
ahead.
Mr. Speaker, and good morning, Bermuda. I would just like to extend condolences to the family of Judith Rattery, who passed the other day. People from the Sand Secondary family would know her very well
Yes.
from the Home Economics Department and her massive contribution to the young men and ladies of that community. Very briefly, she was, excuse me, very briefly, she was a constituent of mine at Packwood Home. And before that, she was the godmother to my sister. So we have a very close tie to the family, and their sadness is our sadness, and we extend our deepest sympathies to them. And on a positive note, I would like to extend congratulations to Constituency 33's very own Brittany Darko for being named Nurse of the Year. From an outstanding family, and numerous members from the Western community would like to be associated with it. But we're very proud of her. She is an outstanding individual, and we expect even greater things from her in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP Simmons. MP Caesar, Minister, to jump before you. Everybody behind you is getting before you this morning. MP Caesar.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, you have noted that there are several beautiful ladies in the gallery today adorned in red, as am I. No, they are not here to support the OBA. They are actually the ladies.
I thought it was pre-cup match.
Yes,
Whatever, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I will say that.
I hear everybody in the back agreeing to that too.
Well, I forgive them that. I forgive them that. No, they are not here for those reasons. They are the illustrious members of the Bermuda Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. My sorors and I are celebrating our inaugural Delta Days in Bermuda, which is akin to the similar conference held in the United States, Washington, D.C., in the Capitol at the United States Congress. In particular, the Social Action Committee of the Bermuda Alumni Chapter arranged for this event as a means to educate our sorors on legislative and parliamentary processes and advance voter knowledge. DST, or Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, is a public service sorority which was founded on the campus of Howard University on January 13th, 1913. We have over 300,000 members worldwide, which includes countries such as, obviously, the United States, the Arabian Gulf, Bahamas, Canada, Germany, Jamaica, Japan, the Republic of Korea, the Virgin Islands, and of course, our lovely island home, Bermuda. Notably, Mr. Speaker, the Bermuda Alumni Chapter is this year celebrating our 35th charterversary as a chapter, so 35 years in Bermuda. In addition, this is the 25th year of our signature community event, which promotes reading and literacy, popularly known as the Reading Festival, Children's Reading Festival. I now take this time to greet my sorors and welcome them to the chamber. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Minister Birch.
Mr. Speaker, good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to offer condolences to the family of Lucinda Worrell Stowe. Mr. Speaker, I've known or had known Lucinda for more than 50 years. We served in youth parliament together, and have been friends ever since. Mr. Speaker, I had the tremendous amount of respect for her. She was a teacher, but she was more than a teacher. She taught at, I can't remember what these schools called now because I'm that old. When she taught there, it was the educational center where you sent students that could not survive or operate in the normal school environment to that place. And she demonstrated what a skill set that every teacher should have, which goes beyond just teaching the curriculum that's provided for in schools. She saved more children out of that school than one can possibly imagine. Mr. Speaker, the I my favorite story. I've helped her. She's called on me to help on a number of occasions, and I'm always have said yes. But in one occasion in 2003, she was taking a group of students to Cuba, and she had one very troublesome young man who she had gone and found out that his reason for bad behavior was not to disrupt school or to do any of those things, was as a result of his own personal domestic circumstance. And so he was an orphan. And the Ministry of Education told her that you can take these children to Cuba, but you cannot take this young man. And that you cannot spend any taxpayers' dollars on taking them to Cuba. So she raised her own money to take him and took him as a result of her desire to expose him to other orphans who did not view that as a death sentence or a catastrophe in their lives, that he could still thrive and progress. And that young man is Nicky Bascom, Mr. Speaker. And so she became a mother to Nicky and saved him from what could have been a complete disaster. And there are countless other young people that fall into that same category. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. MP Keynes, you were pretty quick that time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If it pleases you, Mr. Speaker.
Right
Mr. Speaker, I'd like for this honorable chamber to offer condolence to the family of Morris Francis. Mr. Francis is what we would call an icon in Bermuda. He attended the Howard Academy. He and a group of his comrades formed the company that we now know as Tools and Equipment. For a number of years, he and the men of Tools and Equipment put together and combined their resources with cooperative economics and to the community of Central Hamilton and far beyond. That was the place where you went to get your tools, your equipment, and your supplies. They had enough other endeavors of gas stations in Bermuda, and they represented a element of our country that not only did they pool their resources to form cooperative economics, they were beacons of hope to a lot of men and women in this community that say that we can go to high school together, but we can have productive enterprise in Bermuda. He was also a taxi owner and operator, Mr. Speaker, and he was a member of the Hamilton Seventh-day Adventist Church, an elder for over 50 years at the Hamilton Seventh-day Adventist Church. He leaves to mourn his wife, Rosalind, his daughter, Marissa, and her husband and their granddaughter, asks for suitable condolences to be sent to this family. Mr. Speaker, on a brighter occasion, there is a very important person to me, Mr. Speaker, that you know very well, that most recently celebrated her 78th birthday. Mr. Speaker, she came to these beloved isles in 1964, immersed herself in our culture, whether it's through the St. John's Ambulance, working as a nurse at the King Edward Memorial Hospital and at the Westmeath at the Westmeath Nursing Home for over 30 years. She managed to raise 4 kids and several grandchildren in that period of time. Mr. Speaker, this person was responsible for the forming of the West Indian Association and the Jamaican Association in her basement at a time where the rights of the West Indians in this country were oftentimes trampled upon. Her and her comrades from the West Indian community became a voice for those people in our community. Later, that West Indian Association morphed out of the same home into the Jamaican Association and were the unofficial consulates, many of them, including the Premier's mother, for the Jamaican community in Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, the person celebrating their 78th anniversary is indeed Shernette Yvonne Nathan Keynes. And I'd like for this House to send the suitable congratulations to my mother. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, the House will, and I'm sure she had challenged with at least one or two of those four.
I am informed
children
that
raised.
I'm informed that one or two of those children gave difficulty, Mr. Speaker.
So could anticipate that. Thank you. I'm moving sharing her birthday celebrations. Deputy Premier.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Speaker, and to you and members of the House and members of the community. Like to give a couple of condolences. I'd like to be associated with the condolence to Winifred Robinson. Many of this House may not know that she is the widow of Walter N.H. Robinson, a former member of this House and a founder of the PLP. So condolences to her family and all those of the Robinson group. And I know that Miss Winifred Robinson was a St. Georgian as well, so a long-standing, I believe, born and bred, and also a member of the St. George's community. So they also should be given condolences for her passing. Also, some time ago, condolences to the family of Hiltoline Birch, who passed away some weeks ago. Ms. Birch, I met while she was running the feeding program that was run by St. Monica's Church some years ago, where they were doing meals for people in the community. And I'm sure that Minister Weeks would like to be associated also with that condolence as well. And lastly, I'd like to offer a note of congratulations as I note today in the media a recognition to a young man, Aaron Critchlow, who received an award for his work around the environment. And any young person in Bermuda who has decided to make championing our environment a cause deserves certainly recognition. They are the ones who will inherit the earth and our island community to ensure that it is safe and clean for the future. So hats off to any young person who takes leadership in that area. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Speaker.
Deputy. MP Swan. I think you beat everybody down the back there in your move that time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's right. I am have a little bit of an ailment, but not enough to prevent me from having heartfelt condolences sent to the family of one of my mentors, Mr. Arthur Chesley Trott, who was my art teacher at Warwick Sec, who was taught by my art teacher at Berkeley, who was our art teacher the year he passed, the late Charles Lloyd Tucker. And I'd like to associate every Berkeleyite and every member of parliament and the whole country with this condolences, because Chesley Trott was an artist who I learned a great deal from, as we were taught golf at the same time by the great Herman Tushy Bascom. And I learned a lot about his prowess as a tennis player, how he grafted his tennis skills, having been runner-up in the Bermuda Open Tennis Championship 3 times. Walter King used to say, but they never remember you when you come second, Chesley. But I can tell you this, that Chesley will be remembered for finishing second 3 times, because I'm telling it today. But I know how much heart he put into his sculpturing, because he had the sculpture in his heart long before he found the tree that fit the bill of what he was going to make. He loved plants. He loved fishing. He truly enjoyed sport, and he enjoyed travel. And I can continue on well beyond my 3 minutes, but I can't today because I want to send condolences to the family of my friend Malcolm Lowe, who passed away. We both grew up together, both come from golfing families. I was very influenced by his father, Willard Joe White Lowe. And on behalf of the golfing community, Malcolm will be sorely missed by his family. He loved his family dearly. His wife comes from White Hill, so he had certainly good taste when he went looking. And I just want to say heartfelt condolences to the Lowe family, and be associated with my condolences to my schoolmate Lucinda, to the family of Winifred Robinson, associated with MP Kansas. Congratulations to his mom, and I know he ran out of time before he wished my cousin her happy birthday on a milestone. His darling wife Maxanne Keynes.
MP Fogo.
Good morning to the House, and good morning to the people of Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, I would like to be associated with the condolences for Mrs. Robinson, the mother of Gina Swankson, Donna Swankson, and Kit Swankson. I often, on my early morning walks, would pass her sitting on the hill that leads down to Tobacco Bay. She would sit outside at the wall and always have a warm greeting. And for that, she will be missed, not just by myself, but many others who would stop on occasion and speak with her. I know her family will definitely sorely miss her. She's the daughter of Mr. Johnny Smith, who used to have a grocery shop in St. George's. And those of us who are true St. Georgians would remember that, because that's where we used to go to buy all of our produce. He, I guess, served the community well. And his daughter, who at times would be working beside him, that was the space where she had her introduction to many St. Georgians. Mr. Speaker, I would like to, and I never normally do this, give birthday greetings to one of our very own AMPs, Mr. Craig Cannonier, and one of our former premiers, Mr. Hewitt Brown. It is May 17th is their birthday. So I just thought I'll associate the House with these birthday greetings for both. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. MP, not MP, Rip, Mr. Rip, you have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, it would certainly be remiss if I didn't get up and associate myself with the condolences to Morris Francis. Everything my honorable member Kane said about him is true. However, I have to correct him that Morris was one of my classmates in the Bermuda Technical Institute. And he was one of the top mechanics that came out of that school. And on very many occasions, he assisted me in correcting some problem with my car. I would also like to be associated with the condolences for Mr. Chesley Trutt, again associated with the Bermuda Technical Institute. He was our art student, and he was a very good art student at that, and as well as his other athletic pros as well. So with that, I'd ask that the condolences be sent again to both families. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rip. Minister Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to send congratulatory remarks to the Simons brothers on the successful release of their new music video called Swing. In 2 weeks on YouTube, they garnered 30,000 views. Mr. Speaker, I had the pleasure of seeing them perform many years ago, and they were really good then. So I can imagine as they have become seasoned, that they're even better now. The group, Mr. Speaker, are back on the island. They live in Panama, and their recent video was filmed in Cuba, and in listening to it, you can hear the Latin influence coming through. They're back on island. They have a concert, Summer of Swing, that is on tonight and tomorrow night at the City Hall, the Earl Cameron Theater, and it starts each night at 8 o'clock. The tickets are available on their website, www.thesimonsbrothersband.com. facebook.com/Summer of Swing. Now, the brothers are Jonathan, 25, Solomon, 22, and Leonardo, 18. So they're very young, but have been at this for quite some time. I believe Jonathan was still in primary school when I first saw them perform. So they have a bright future ahead of them, and I wish them, these young Bermudian men, every success going forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Does any other member wish to make a Minister Weeks? You can make your contribution now.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I would like to start off by being associated with the remarks for Lucinda Worrell Stowe. I'd like to reiterate what Colonel Burchett said. I have known her for quite some time, and we have worked in the arena of at-risk young boys, and she had a passion for it, Mr. Speaker, and she will be sorely missed in that community. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to, on a positive note, send congratulations to Miss Gina Spence. I think she's Virgil now. Gina Spence Productions has been in operation for 33 years, Mr. Speaker. They started off helping at-risk youth, but it morphed into helping those families that were grieving from the loss of loved ones to the violence that permeates our society. I went to their 33-year celebration. You know, she's one of my constituents, and there are people from all walks that were there to celebrate and support her in that endeavor. So my congrats goes out to her, and I'd like this honorable house to do the same. Mr. Speaker, one other congratulatory statement that I have that I'd like to be associated with the member from C31. Mr. Speaker, when she talked about the Delta Sigma Theta, they are my Greek sisters. I'm a part of the illustrious Kappa Alpha Psi, so I have to send my condolences, my congratulatory remarks in support of Delta. My wife is actually a part of that illustrious sorority. Mr. Speaker, Delta is the Social Action Committee, like the C31 MP said. They're not only active here in Bermuda, but actually worldwide in many other institutions. So what they do for Bermuda is commendable, Mr. Speaker. Somebody of note that I had to do a little homework is the Supreme Court Justice. What's her name? Kamala. No. She's hang on. Got it. Supreme Court Justice, Mr. Speaker. Her name is Ketanji Brown Jackson. If you give me a second, I will get it right, Mr. Speaker. Right. But it's just to show, and Angela Bassett is also a significant member of Delta Sigma Theta. So congrats to Delta.
All right, Minister. You bail yourself out there, Minister. You're not all right. All right. M.B. Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and to those in the listening audience and my colleagues. I was told that I can choose between beautiful and ladies in red. I choose both. Congratulations to everybody, and to my colleague who sits next to me and keeps me in check. But Mr. Speaker, I want to give significant kudos to a young man who, in his own words, it's that he normally stays behind these scenes and most of what I do is behind the scenes, says Mr. Johnston. I only poke my head out once in a while, and this is the time that he's poking his head out. Mr. Speaker, he is a graphic designer, and this is his 20th year in operation. He was initially operating out of Toronto and then decided to move back to Bermuda. And what is even more significant than that is he and his team have put forward a short film that's going to be debuted on Monday. And I'm looking forward to going there because he is one of those guys that is he's one of my constituents, by the way. Very, very quiet, very unassuming, but also very, very powerful. And what we now talk about as being a creative, he is one of the genuine creatives and can move mountains. And I want to say almost do magic with an idea. So when you go to him, you express an idea, he's able to take that and to do some incredible work with that. And I've had the personal experience in doing that. And so I want to congratulate him, and also for all persons that actually have the fortitude to go into business for themselves and go through all of the trials and tribulations that occur, and still move forward. And so I'll say again to Mr. Johnson, to Stephen, congratulations to you and your team, and I'll see you on Monday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to make a contribution? Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be associated with the condolences that have been offered by the Minister of Public Works to the family of Ms. Lucinda Worrell-Stowe. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to ask to associate the entire House in the next congratulations, if I may. And on behalf of the Minister of Education, who is attending educational activities this morning, and on, as I said, on behalf of the entire House, I wish to extend congratulations to the 102 graduates from the Bermuda College class of 2024. Certainly like to thank the hardworking teachers and staff who helped them to achieve their goals. Mr. Speaker, of course, as we continue to celebrate and support the Bermuda College, it goes without something that should not be forgotten is that this government, one of the first pledges that we executed when we returned back to office was that we said that we would make Bermuda College accessible to everyone, regardless of financial need. We have achieved that in addition to introducing the College Promise program, where persons who graduate from high school with a 3.0 GPA get to attend the Bermuda College free of charge on a merit scholarship. So merit, need-based, anyone can go to the college, 102 graduates that were able to do that. And so, Mr. Speaker, it's certainly an amazing accomplishment. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to associate the Honorable Attorney General and member for Constituency 36 with the next. Congratulations, Mr. Speaker, because I'd like to offer congratulations to the AG's niece, Ms. Kenny Thompson, who was awarded the player of the match as her AFC Bournemouth women's team retained the South Women's Hampshire Senior Cup earlier this week. It is her first trophy with the club. It is her 8th goal scored thus far this season, and she was recognized for that accomplishment as the player of the match as well. Mr. Speaker, as I close, it would be remiss of me not to join and associate myself with the congratulations for the members of the Bermuda Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Mr. Speaker, as persons in a Greek life know, as I count myself a proud member of Alpha Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, know that the deltas are large, the deltas are everywhere, the deltas are the largest Black Greek letter organization that exists in the United States and around the world. They boast incredible activities globally, but also we are pleased to have a very active chapter here. And every year, of course, we know the work they do in the community, but without question, the work of which they do with the annual reading festival, which attracts hundreds of children to spread the cause of literacy. And so I want to salute the Bermuda Alumni Chapter for its dedication to education and positive change in our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You. Does any other member wish to make a contribution at this time? Madam AG?
Yes.
Look, he took a little of your thunder.
I know
You
he's
can
always
vote it out.
stealing
You
my
can vote
thunder,
it
but
out.
that's okay because it was for a good cause. Of course, I want to associate the remarks that the Premier made about my niece, who continues to show great resilience on her overseas journey. Kenny left her at a very young age, and I am always, always stunned by her maturity, her global perspective, and what she actually gives back on her journey. Not only is she playing football, but she's actually training and coaching a young team at Bournemouth. So to see her growth and maturity is absolutely awe-inspiring, and I send my congratulations, which I've already extended, to my niece now publicly. But on a sad note, I'd like to extend my condolences and those of the House to one of my beloved constituents, a quiet lady, and you hear all the giants in the house, but Mrs. Cynthia Irene Ramin, formerly Brangman. Sands residents may remember her as a dry cleaner at Sandy's dry cleaning, the cleanorama. She had particular skill in wedding dresses, but she was always a humble soul and always a constituent of mine. And she lived at East Shore Road, who ensured that she participated in our constituency functions. She was always one of the first people on the bus when we did our island drives, and her quiet smile and her joviality will be sorely missed. So to her family who are grieving her, we send our condolences, and we will certainly miss her. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I associate Kim Swan with those remarks and my branch in constituency 36. She will sorely be missed.
Any other member wish to make a contribution at this time? MP Adams?
Mr. Speaker, I'm just going to be brief this morning and simply echo the sentiments of those, particularly members in the Greek organizations, and say my congratulatory and be associated to the congratulatory remarks to the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta. I better, that's they say. They better. Absolutely. I have witnessed firsthand the role that they play in the community and the value that they add. And I just want to commend them and hope that they continue the work and push the progress forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to make a contribution? None other? Before we move on, I'm just going to make a couple of brief remarks. MP Keynes, MP Swan bailed you out by remembering one significant to you that you forgot to mention in your birthday. But you aren't the only one to learn today. The Premier, in his time on his speech just now, his father's birthday is today as well. He's last week celebrating his 80th birthday, and he's asked me to mention that in his 3 minutes expired before he had the opportunity to do. So we extend a happy 80th birthday to Mr. Gerald Breck. But while I'm acknowledging the Premier's family, I note in the gallery a familiar face. His wife is visiting us this morning, but beside her is one that made it all possible for her to be here. Her mother's visiting from California. And we'd like to acknowledge her presence here this morning. And this is Miss Chamber Bliss. I trust that you enjoy your time here with us this morning. And I wouldn't say it will be one of the highlights of your visit to Bermuda, but I hope you leave here with pleasant memories of your time here this morning. With that said, I'd like to add my condolences to some remarks. Condolences related that to Mr. Cal Simons and MP Wade Simmons. I was quite shocked to hear that this morning, even though I knew he was quite low. I'd like to be associated also with the condolences with the family of Ms. Judith Rattery and, of course, to Mr. Morris Francis. And with that, members, we'll move on. The next item on the order paper this morning is the matters of privilege. There are none. Personal explanations. There are none. Notice of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. There are none. Introduction of bills. There are none. Notice of motions. There are none. With that said, it now leads us to the order of business for today. And the first item this morning is consideration of the supplementary estimate number 3 for the financial year 2022-2023 in the name of the Premier, Minister of Finance. Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 43.4 and 43.5, I move that supplementary estimate number 3 for financial year 2022-23 be approved.
Any objections? There are none. The matter has now been approved. I mean, no objections, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that we resolve ourselves, the committee of supply to sorry, I need to give the introduction remarks before we resolve ourselves in committee of supply.
This morning,
No problem, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the schedule identifies 3 items totaling $6,723,610 to be included in the supplementary estimate number 3 for 2022-23, all on current account. Honorable members will note, in respect of the total $6,723,610 it is all a technical supplementary. A technical supplementary indicates that the requirement for additional funding can be met within the originally appropriated estimates. However, cannot be transferred since they are appropriated within another ministry or they are appropriated in the capital account. Following the completion of the 2022-23 financial statements in March 2024, a final total current account spending for 2022-23 inclusive of debt service was $1.098 billion, or $16.7 million, 1.5% lower than the adjusted budget of $1.114 billion. Total revenues for 2022-23 were $1.129 billion, or $51.3 million, or 4.8% higher than the original budget of $1.078 billion. Supplementary estimate 22-23 number 3 is directly related to additional expenditures associated with the increased requirement for substitute teachers within the education department to assist with education reform, the reduction in works and engineering quarry products and transport recharges, and the additional overtime required for corrections officers within the Department of Corrections. Based upon the above spending and improved revenue in 2022-23, the final budget deficit was $34.7 million, or $35.3 million, or 50.4% lower than the original forecast of $70 million. Total capital account spending for 22-23 was $66.1 million, or $6.8 million, or 10.3% below the original budget of $73 million. On the capital account, based upon the above spending, there are no further supplementary estimates that will be required for fiscal year 2022-2023. Honorable members will recall that the criteria for determining supplementary estimates requires that all items on current accounts be debated if the total current account spend of the ministry shows an increase of greater than 10%, or $250,000 when compared to the original estimate. All capital items are debatable. Applying the criteria that I've just described on current account, all matters are debatable. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I guess when we go into committee, I'll move the approval of the items current account 1 through 3, which are all debatable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. MP Fogo, will you assume the chair so we can take the House into committee?
Good morning, members. We are now in Committee of Supply for consideration of supplementary estimate number 3 for financial year 2022-2023. There are 3 items in this supplementary estimate to be considered. I call on the Minister in charge for item number 1, Ministry of Education, or the Minister filling in for the Minister of Education, to take the floor. Minister? Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm not filling in for education. I also have a brief.
Okay, hold on. We will move to item 3, the Ministry of National Security. Minister, continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I will now present a 2022-2023 supplementary estimate for Head 25, the Department of Corrections. During the fiscal year 2022-2023, the Department of Corrections operations were greatly impacted by the shortage of staff. To ensure that all measures of safety and security, including the daily operations of the facilities and the court orders, were carried out, the existing staff were required to work a huge amount of overtime. This resulted in a supplement of $1,074,882. Madam Chair, the Department of Corrections had a total of 33 correctional staff vacancies in 2022-2023. This consisted of 1 assistant commissioner at headquarters, 1 principal officer at the Westgate facility, 2 divisional officers at the Correctional Educational Facility, and 1 at the Westgate Correctional Facility. There was a total of 29 basic officers vacancies throughout all the facilities in the fiscal year 2022-2023. Most of the overtime was incurred by the following. Coverage for staff vacancies represented 81% of the supplement. Medical and court escorts represented 7% of the supplement. Coverage of annual leave and sick leave represented 9% of the supplement. Madam Chair, there were some unforeseen incidents that involved inmates having to be housed at King Edward Memorial Hospital, Mid-Atlantic Wellness Institute, as well as suicidal inmates who had to be observed on a 24-hour observation watch. These incidents represent 3% of the supplement. Madam Chair, the Department of Corrections conducted a very aggressive recruitment drive during the fiscal year 2022-2023 with the aim of recruiting at least 25 to 30 correctional officers. Unfortunately, it was extremely difficult to find suitable candidates out of the approximately 200 applicants in both recruitment drives. As is well known, the Department of Corrections competes with our sister uniform departments, Bermuda Fire and Rescue Services, the Bermuda Police, and the Department of Customs for recruits. This creates an even more difficult challenge of recruiting suitable Bermudian candidates. Both of our recruitment drives in 2022-2023 yielded a total of 9 suitable applicants for correctional officers and 1 suitable nursing officer. Madam Chair, this fiscal year saw corrections experience a considerable number of officers exit due to retirements. We had 9 officers retire between the ranks of basic officers and chief officers, as well as 3 resignations of basic officers. These retirements and resignations further exacerbated the staff shortage and added to demand for staff to work overtime hours. Madam Chair, during this current year, the Department of Corrections will be conducting more recruitment drives to fill staff vacancies. In fact, the department is well advanced in a current recruitment drive. The aim is to fill vacant posts and, by extension, reduce the need for officers to work overtime. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any other members who wish to speak to Head 25? I recognize the Deputy Opposition Leader. You have the floor, member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the Minister for the update on this supplementary. A couple of questions, considering that the opposition brought up during this recent budget debate that there was going to be a need because of the shortfall that we had seen in corrections, that we would have to continue to have a large amount of overtime paid out. So could the minister let us know whether, considering that we are now looking at a supplementary for 2022-2023, in May of 2025, will we be doing the same sort of thing because of the shortfall? I understand that the minister said that the recruiting drive is continuing to show a shortfall of the amount of people that they're able to recruit. So considering that what we have is not enough people to fill these roles, an increase in vacancy, it would be obvious to most people that this problem is going to continue. So my follow-up question is, has an analysis been done within corrections to show that people that are working in a high stress environment potentially have impact of health, mental health, and just the overall stress level of the workers that are not only having to work in this stress environment, but having to do an excessive, huge amount of overtime, as the minister pointed out. And if that analysis has been done, would he be able to provide for us what the recommendations were? And is there a plan in place, considering that we do not seem to be able to recruit enough locally, to figure out another way for us to fill these roles, because it seems to be reaching a critical point where the safety of the members of the corrections unit, along with the safety of the community, because This is an important role that they are fulfilling, and we can't have a situation where, as more people retire, more stress is being put on the people that are left behind. This seems to be an emergency situation that we see has happened in 2022, 2023, and has continued. And in the budget just passed, we see that it looks like it will continue for this upcoming year. So if the minister can give us an idea whether analysis has been done, what has been put in place for us to fix this situation so that we don't end up with a dangerous position when it comes to correction. Thank you.
Thank you, member. Are there any other members who wish to speak to head 25? There being no other members, Minister, I call on you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the honorable member who had a contribution to make. I would like to start off by saying, not only for these honorable members, but for the listening public, all is not doom and gloom in the corrections department. The management and staff there are doing an excellent job, and there are still incidences of overtime. I was asked a question of, has there an analysis been done? Yes, an analysis has been done, and we are still in draft form as to the recruitment processes that take place, not only in corrections, but through all the uniformed services. So that assessment has been done, and the results of it will be shared in due course, because we know and we realize that not only in the uniformed services, but throughout government, we have issues with getting qualified applicants. So we have to bring our recruitment process into the 21st century, and we are well underway in the corrections and uniform services to do such. Thank you.
Are there any other members who wish to speak? If there being none, then I will have the minister move that the head be approved. Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I now move that head 25 of the supplementary estimates for the fiscal year 22-23, head 25 be moved.
It has been moved that head 25 for the supplementary estimate number 3, year 2022-2023 be approved. Any objections? There being none, so approved. Thank you, Minister. I now call on the minister for head 82. Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In relation to head 82, supplemental brief, the Ministry of Public Works budgets $5.5 million each year as an estimated amount to be recharged to other government departments for work done at the government quarry for non-public works activities. This work includes fuel for all vehicles that use the quarry or marsh valley, garage services for vehicles, and utilization costs. The budget is a negative line item that is balanced by the recharging of other budgets. The purpose of this system was to provide a means of tracking the costs of services within the accounting software. Updates to the E1 accounting system unfortunately made the recharging process manual, and as such, the process has become largely anachronistic. This $2,971,260 supplemental request represents the balance of the $5.5 million budgeted costs that were not recharged by other departments due to technical difficulties within the E1 accounting system. Until the issues with the accounting system are rectified, we will continue to expect these supplementals, which are administrative in nature. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any other members who wish to speak to head 82? I recognize Member Cannoneer. Member Cannoneer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And I recognize the challenge with these recharges. I must say, having had to experience it firsthand, it's a bit illogical, the process and how we're doing this here. And I and I know it probably is frustrating for the minister as well. And I'm hoping that we can find a better way to deal with this here, but it's been going on for years now, under just about every administration, trying to deal with this here. I mean, this is recharges from 2022. I would even expect with a manual system we could do better in getting these invoices recharged. So I hope that the minister is able to make some headway this financial budget year, that we can get a better hold of it. I understand that the E1 system can be has been a bit challenging with this. But I believe that even with these recharges, even before the E1 system, we were having challenges with recharges. So I'm hoping that the minister can find a better way forward, so that we're not having to come 2 years after with these recharges, despite the fact that it is manual. I appreciate his explanation. Fuel, garage services, and they're always basically the same. Just about every time we do them, these recharges, they're always about fuel, garage services. So I'm expecting that maybe we can do better as we go forward. And I know that it is a frustrating process for the minister himself. Thank you.
Thank you, member. Are there any other members who wish to speak to Head 82? There being none, Minister.
Madam Chair, the shadow is understating my views on this matter. But what I can say is that I have stood on this floor for a number of occasions talking about recharges. Let me just say, I don't fully understand why the bureaucratic process is the way it is. I'm not an accountant, and the accountants can't explain it satisfactorily to me either. But what I have asked the Chief Financial Officer and others in the ministry is to set out what the challenges are and what the recommendations might be. I think the Shadow Minister will appreciate that E1 is the purview of the Accountant General, who guards and protects it with great enthusiasm, and trying to get them to utilize all of the facilities that the system supposedly provides has not been successful thus far. With that said, Madam Chair, I move that Head 82 be approved.
It has been moved that Head 82 be approved. Are there any objections? There being none, approved. I now call on the Minister for Head 17 to put Head 17 for consideration. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the requirement for a supplementary estimate more often than not indicates unforeseen challenges in a ministry or department of government that has to be met in a given year. The Ministry of Education has one department in the supplemental number 3 for financial year 22-23, and that is the Department of Education Head 17. Madam Chair, the unbudgeted sum of $2,677,468 is for Business Unit 27160 substitutes. Madam Chair, the budget allocation for substitute teachers is, at best, estimated based on staffing levels, operational needs, and the average needs in past years. Madam Chair, in 22-23, a high number of substitutes were required to fill in for teachers who were absent for any given number of reasons: illness, personal leave, special leave, etc., during this relevant period. Substitute teachers also cover for reassigned staff assisting with education reform, working in the education reform unit, or participating in education reform signature transition teams. Madam President, school transition teams. Madam Chair, the original 22-23 budget for substitutes was $2.7 million, but the expenditure to year end reached $5.96 million, reflecting an overage of $3.3 million. And $640,888 was found within the operation expenses, leaving the $2,067,468. Previously, funds for funded vacant posts would offset overages for substitutes. However, due to the defunding of the department's vacant funded positions, unlike in the past, funds were not available for the overages of substitutes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam
Thank,
Chair.
thank you, Minister. Are there any other members who wish to speak to Head 17? I recognize Member Smith. Member, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the minister. If the minister could provide for us, considering that there was an added change with the reform happening, what percentage increase would have been caused in that year because of the reform that would have been different than other years? And on a go forward basis, obviously we've heard that there has been a shortage of substitute teachers going forward. If the minister can give us an idea of whether there is a way for us to maybe budget differently for that, considering that he no longer has the ability to cover it with the vacated positions as he was able to do in the past. Considering that there seems to be an issue with a lack of substitute teachers, if the minister could give us, some details of whether there is a change that he will be putting in place for us to get to the point where we have the resources of substitute teachers for the coverage of our teachers, because I believe that this is causing quite a bit of frustration within the community and specifically from our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Are there any other members who wish to speak? There being none, I call on the minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, one thing that I would like to add clarity to is, and the member opposite continues says, what will he do? Meaning the minister. As you know, operational activities within our departments are the sole responsibility of, in this particular case, are the sole responsibility of the Commissioner of Education. And so what we have done is consistently asked for this to be this perennial issue, because it's an issue that's been going on for forever, to be looked at, and how we could do things differently so we don't run into the same issues that we seem to run into year after year after year. Again, part of this is the unknown. You don't know how many people will be sick. You don't know how many people will take personal leave. And as we know, as with the signing of the new collective bargaining agreement that was signed after the budget, after the budget was what was being looked at, is that now teachers actually have more personal leave days added in. And so I anticipate that there will be a challenge again this year, because that's a feature that we couldn't even talk about, but it's one that we are working through. When it comes to teachers when it comes to finding space to cover teachers that are perhaps working on education reform initiatives, now we do have some control over that, and we're looking at how that can be done differently. And that talks about how scheduling can be done in schools differently. So teachers that need to be absent may not have classes during the time that they need to be absent. Their prep time is shifted around. So different things along those lines are being done. Also, the STTs and these teams are slated to start to work later in the day, and teachers would be compensated for working after school hours as to not disrupt the actual school day. And so those are some of the things that are being looked at in terms of what the percentage is of substitutes that were utilized for education reform. It's something I'll have to take on forward to the department so we can get some accurate numbers behind that. And I invite the MP. I invite the MP to actually reach out to me, and we can find out that information. I just don't know it right now.
Okay. Are there any other members who wish to speak to Head 17? There being none, Minister, can you move for approval?
Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Madam Chair. I now move that Head 17 be approved.
It has been moved that Head 17 be approved. Are there any objections? There being none, approved. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, noting that all heads have been approved, I move that supplementary estimate number 3 for financial year 2022-23 be reported to the House as printed.
It has been moved that supplementary number 3, 22-23, year 22-23, sorry, be reported to the House as printed. No, and there are no objections. Approved. I call on the Speaker to resume his chair. Yes. Move that off.
Members, are there any objections to the consideration of supplementary estimate number 3 for financial year 2022 and 2023 being reported to the House as printed? There are none. The matter has been reported as printed. We will now move on to the next item. The second item on the order for today is the second reading of the Registration of Births and Deaths Amendment Act 2024 in the name of the Deputy Premier and Minister of Home Affairs. Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move that the bill entitled The Registration of Births and Deaths Amendment Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Are there any objections? There are none. Continue.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to rise today to introduce the bill entitled The Registration, Births and Deaths Amendment Act 2024. The bill seeks to amend the Registration of Births and Deaths Act 1949 to make provision for the issuance of short form birth certificate. Mr. Speaker, currently the death certificate can only be issued by the Registry General Department when the Registry General is given notice that a death has occurred in Bermuda pursuant to sections 11 and 12 of the 1949 Act. However, Mr. Speaker, there is currently an unfortunate delay in issuing a death certificate when the notice of death, Form E, has not yet been received at the Registry General Department, where a medical practitioner or the coroner is reviewing a particular death and are not yet able to determine the cause of death. Mr. Speaker, just as an aside, I know this is a matter that has often brought a lot of confusion to people in that when persons aren't able to get a certificate over time, they presumably believe it's the fault of the registrar and do not appreciate that the registrar cannot issue a certificate until a number of other practitioners and persons involved with the legal process have done their work. The registrar is not at the beginning of the process, is at the end of the process of dealing with a passing of a individual. So people need to be perhaps more aware of that. And often things happen, and I know that often people don't quite understand these processes. Mr. Speaker, when a cause of death cannot be determined or certified by a medical practitioner or the coroner, then the Form E is not received by the Registrar General, as neither the medical practitioner nor the coroner are prepared to sign off on notice of death. This was evident during particularly COVID-19 pandemic, when the Bermuda Hospitals Board directed their pathologists not to carry out a postmortem on a body that tested positive for the presence of the COVID-19 virus. This created an issue when there is a deceased person whose cause of death cannot be determined, as no medical practitioner would sign off stating the cause of death. Mr. Speaker, putting aside the emotional distress of losing a loved one, this issue can and does pose major complications in practical and legal aspects of managing the affairs of a deceased. It can potentially lead to delays, disputes, or difficulties in assessing benefits and closing accounts, as well as management of other elements of a person's estate. Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to address such challenges by permitting a medical practitioner or the coroner to complete a shortened notice of death when the cause of death cannot be determined. This shortened notice will enable a medical practitioner or the coroner to confirm that an individual is deceased without having to immediately identify the cause of death. Mr. Speaker, the bill empowers the Registrar General, after receipt of an abbreviated notice of death, to issue a short form certificate of death. A short certificate of death is an abbreviated death certificate that will only include the fact of the death or demographic and not cause of death. In closing, Mr. Speaker, the Registration of Births and Deaths Amendment Act 2024 is this government's commitment to improve upon the vital registration services provided. By introducing a short certificate of death to simply confirm a person is deceased, and not to delay issuance of the certificate when the cause of death cannot be immediately determined. Mr. Speaker, I now move that the bill entitled Registration of Births and Deaths Amendment Act 2024 be read a second time.
Are there any objections? None? Would any member like to speak to that? MP Pearman?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Honorable Minister and Deputy Premier. Minister, a couple of questions on this, but they can be dealt with in committee. But I would just flag a few points. Obviously, the odd point is that only 2 sittings ago we had an amendment in this area, and I'm just curious why this is following on now when we amended this 2 sittings ago. But that aside, we do understand that delays have been occasioned with death certificates, and this is a matter of great frustration to the Bermudian population, and many people are having other matters held back by delays in these certificates, which of course can have knock-on effects and delays in probate and the like. And no doubt that is frustrating to those people who have already suffered a loss of a loved one. The questions, the 2 sort of high-level questions I have, although as I said, they can be dealt with in committee if you prefer, Minister, are one, the short form is going to omit the reason for death, the cause of death. And so the first question is, will this in any way diminish our statistical capacity in that we are issuing certificates without the reason for the death on them? I do note that there is the word initial in the bill. And so is it envisaged that there will be effectively a 2-step process with a short form issued, and then after which there will be a long form issued? And the second sort of overarching question goes to, and I appreciate we can deal with this in committee, but I thought I'd flag it just here. I'm just trying to get a grip on the process at clause 4 of page 2 of the bill. That refers to short form Form E, paragraphs 1 to 5, which appears to differ from short form Form F1 at clause 6 of the bill. And I'm just wondering why that distinction is and what the process looks like. So those are our only 2 overarching questions, and we have a few questions in committee. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member. Does any other member wish to make a contribution? MP Fogo.
Yes, ever so briefly, Mr. Speaker, I just want to emphasize the gratitude for bringing this amendment to the House for consideration, because not just during COVID, but we have seen many occasions where persons who are riddled with grief are not able to find closure because they're not able to, in a timely manner, get their death certificate. And I can speak personally to constituents who have gone through that experience to the point where they're not able to have a death certificate, almost losing their house, and with ours only being able to say that after there was considerable intervention to the various parties who deal with the issuance of a death certificate. And I will say, by putting this process in place, it allows the other processes to continue in the background, but allows families to move on with having closure in terms of having lost their loved ones. And so I'm grateful that this process has been put in place, and I'm sure that many people with this new shortened version of a death certificate will be able to deal with the grief of their with the loss of their loved ones, be able to find a good level of closure, and be able to move on with business at hand, once having been issued this shortened version of the death certificate. So I want to thank the ministry for putting this type of process in place. And on that note, I will take my seat, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, MP. Does any other member wish to make a contribution? MP Jackson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to my feet representing members of our community who really have had a very hard time getting a death certificate. And in many cases, it does go back to COVID. And I guess one of the big lessons learned for our community in general is that it's really important to have a relationship with your medical practitioner. Know your doctor and make sure that your doctor knows you, because I do believe that that helps an awful lot. Certainly during the time of COVID, there were folk who may not have had that relationship with their doctor, and it made it very difficult for a doctor to sign off on a death certificate or a Form E with a cause, because they just didn't have the history and the relationship with the patient. So that's a real lesson learned, and certainly the constituents that I've spoken to acknowledge that it is important, and it helps an awful lot if someone is known within the health community. The other piece for me is that there are folk that are in our community who are suffering through the delays of actually wanting to know why their family member passed away. And so the backlog has caused some additional stress on the family. So I guess my question to the minister is, if we are able to execute on short form and get the death certificates to a number of people who have been waiting for a long period of time, is this going to help to free up the coroner and the magistrate to be able to do some of the deeper dive autopsies that are required for people who really do need to know right away what that cause of death is? And so if the minister might be able to give us a little information on that, it would be greatly appreciated. I'm also not sure, Mr. Speaker, whether this is something that did occur during COVID-19 and during the pandemic, where there was an increase and a frequency of members who, excuse me, I lost my train of thought there. Somebody just walked across. So my question is, did this delay and high volume of requests for death certificates start during the pandemic, when we did have an unusual number of people that wanted to get death certificates of the passing of their family members? Or has this always been the case, that it's always been a relatively either slow or delayed process to get a death certificate? And if that is the case, I guess my question to the minister is, will this short form death certificate be a permanent structure, or are we at some point hoping that with volumes of deaths that we may then go back to a situation where the coroner will also give a cause of death at the time that the death certificate is issued? That's it for me, Mr. Speaker.
Would any other member wish to make a contribution at this time? No other member? Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you for the questions of members. It is very much understood that this has been a very rather sensitive issue for quite some time. And there has been work to find an effort to resolve it, because we appreciate it as the registrar of deaths that the byproducts of some of the issues have wider impacts, as I've detailed in my brief, that it impacts resolution by families and closure. It impacts real legal, constructive legal issues for individuals and families. The ability to settle an estate properly is often a serious issue. and the inability to do that can bring about hardship, emotional hardship, financial hardship, and structural hardship on a number of levels. Now, and so this is an issue that we, particularly out of the experience of COVID, that created this circumstance of the volume of unresolved deaths, that a solution had to be found. So this is an effort, in keeping with the throne speech, in keeping with the government's commitment, to create a solution. And this solution had to be worked out with lawyers, had to be worked out with certainly the medical community, certainly the registrar, and because there are, just issuing the certificate isn't the issue, it's the legal impacts of an unresolved death, and ultimately how that gets managed through a process, because the certificate is a part of a process of dealing with a particular circumstance of the human experience. And there are other legal implications in that, and the certificate helps to resolve no matter what the circumstance may be of the death. But this is being done because of the obviously serious issues that arose, particularly out of the circumstance of COVID. But there have been in the past, because the question came up, is this a part of a wider problem? Now, there have been problems in the past with the ability of persons to get a certificate. But again, the understanding should be, and we will do our best to further educate the public about this, that the certificate is issued after other parts of the process of dealing with the resolution of the demise of an individual is dealt with the medical aspects, with the coroner, and there may be other pieces there. It's only after all these other things are solved, and often those things cannot be resolved and have not been able to resolve in other death circumstances. And we've seen the reports, members, in the press with where people have been waiting quite a bit of time to get a certificate. And this is not, in most cases, as I have researched, is not the issue created by the registrar. It's created by other aspects of the circumstance of that individual's demise, unfortunate as it would have been to their family, their friends, and others, that had not been properly resolved. It could be the fact that they died overseas. It could be other factors. It could be a number of things of which often come into the circumstances of a death. But those are issues that have to be resolved first before the registrar gets the information to produce a certificate. And I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, members of this House, once the registrar gets the information that they need within a very short period of time, and I argue what, perhaps 7 to 10 days maybe, they can issue a certificate in every circumstance. But there are other parts of this, and often because of the emotion and the grief, and often issues that necessarily cannot be made public, we find these circumstances have been created in the past. And we find where often years go by. And then we find reports in the media, and we have to deal with these issues with a level of sensitivity, Mr. Speaker, irrespective of how things may look. No one wants I don't care how angry they are or how grief-stricken they are, no one wants their family's personal and the personal issues of their loved ones splattered in the media. There's no one in this house who would want that, irrespective of the circumstance you find or the irritation you find. And so there's always an effort to be as delicate and as sensitive and as concerning with the circumstance. And I know this from my own interaction with the registrar on circumstances brought to my attention. The registrar takes great care and takes this role very seriously on ensuring, because ultimately there are implications if things aren't done right. There are legal implications that can actually create challenges for persons because of perhaps there are issues related to the estate that have nothing to do with the registrar, nothing to do with other issues, that with not proper certification done in the proper way can create further challenge. But I'll go back again. it is particularly the experience of COVID that created the need, because of the volume of the circumstance, the actual real circumstance that deaths, unfortunately, because of the unique circumstances of COVID, were unresolved. So this certificate will help in ensuring that, from a legal standpoint, the process of dealing with the resolution of that estate can actually start properly. But also, if at some point in the future the detail for the long form is actually completed, that can be issued as well. But and this process will not interfere with that. But the short form brings some like efficiency and conclusion to the process. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will take my seat so we can go into committee.
You, Deputy.
Honorable members, we are now in committee of the whole for further consideration on the bill entitled the Registration Births and Deaths Amendment Act 2024. Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I move that I'd like to move the clauses 1 through 8. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I'll take your guidance. It is 12:28. Perhaps we can adjourn for lunch, or would you like for me to get started? We can adjourn and then we'll start back at 2. Is that, are you comfortable with me making that move at this point, Mr. Chairman?
We'll adjourn and return at 2 o'clock.
Go ahead.